If you are a new creator, you will always feel like, oh, I'm too late. I'm too late to LinkedIn. I'm too late to Substack. I'm too late to Medium, too late to YouTube. But you are on the safer side investing into one of those platforms that have been around for 10 plus years rather than chasing the next big thing. Without an email list, you have a following, and the following is worthless because your followers can be gone in an instant, your profiles can be banned. With an email list, you have a business. You have an opportunity to monetize, you are interesting to collaboration partners, and you just have so much more power and control over anything you do.
For today's episode, I am joined by Sinem Gunel, my business partner here at Right Build Skill. And in this episode, we will be diving into how Sinem managed to build an audience of more than 100,000 people by writing on platforms like Medium and Substack. Now, Sinem, I know that maybe from the outside looking at your journey, people might credit your results to just being consistent, right? And it's advice that being thrown out there all the time, just be consistent. That's the key. What are your thoughts on that related to your own journey?
The problem with consistency is it's only one aspect, and there's a whole spectrum to what it means and what it contains. If you're not consistent, all the other advice is not going to be very useful. But if consistency is the only thing you rely on, you're not going to get very far either. When I started writing, I was consistent and I published a lot. But that was the only thing I did. I didn't learn, I didn't connect with others, I didn't pay attention to what my readers were saying or what their feedback was. I wasn't iterating. And I didn't come very far. I published over 150 articles without really making a lot of money or getting a lot of views on my content. Consistency matters, but it only works if you pair it with a lot of the other advice that you'll hear as well that just sounds more painful and harder to implement. The biggest advantage you'll get is if you combine consistency with consistent iteration, consistent feedback. Yes, be consistent, show up consistently, but also consistently ask yourself, what could I do better? What could I improve? How can I get feedback to find out what my blind spots are so I don't consistently make the same mistakes?
Let's dive into that. How did you actually gather feedback? Because I think it's one thing to look at your own articles and look yourself, what can I do better? But what were some other ways that you got feedback so you were actually improving rather than just consistently doing the same thing?
Let me actually take a step back. The first thing I did when I realized that I need to do things differently in order to get different results was comparing what I was doing to what my idols were doing. There were a lot of writers that I was really admiring, and I knew that they were doing really well. They were building huge audiences. And I literally printed out my articles and their articles, and I had a yellow marker in my hand, and I compared. And this was very easy because there were a lot of differences. I was making a lot of mistakes, but this was a very easy way for me to figure out, oh, that's what he's doing in his introductions. And that's why I like reading it versus take a look at my introduction. It sucks. That's why people are not enjoying it. That was my first big learning process. And I did this with a lot of articles from a lot of different writers. And I played the solo game for more than a year, more than 1.5 years, where I was just writing by myself, getting my stuff out there, but not really talking to any other writers. And I was lucky that at some point, some writers started to reach out to me and they were like, hey, I saw your stuff. You're doing cool things. Let's connect over a call. And then they connected me with other people. And I got into some Slack communities and groups where people were actually putting up their articles and asking for feedback. And that's how I started to get feedback on my writing. I literally asked other writers, peers in those groups where I felt like a massive imposter, to be honest. I asked them to give feedback on my articles. And that's the easiest way to get started if you don't have a coach or mentor or someone guiding you through the process.
Was that easy for you to get feedback on your writing, or was it difficult for you? Because I know, at least myself, sometimes I find it a bit difficult to receive feedback on the things I'm doing wrong, but I've learned over time that it's necessary, right? If someone can point out what you're doing wrong or what you could do better, that's how you improve. That's how you grow your audience. You're able to build your business. But I know for a lot of people that can be a struggle because it's like painful to hear what you're not doing right.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
I mean, to be fair, at that point, I knew that I was very new to that journey. I had no idea what I was doing, and I was grateful for every guidance that I could get. So my ego was not in the way there, but I totally understand what you mean in terms of it's hard to get feedback. But I feel like it's harder when you don't explicitly ask for it and someone is telling you that what you did was wrong. In my scenario, I was really grateful for it because I knew that there was a lot that I still had to learn, even though I was doing quite well at that time. Anything that I could learn would just give me a head start and an advantage on the next piece or in the next project. So that was actually easy and something that was priceless.
So you asked for feedback from your peers, people maybe further in the writing game. Did you also analyze any data from your audience, for example? So I know you've been writing on Medium for years, and Medium provides you some data and you get some audience feedback. Did you take that into account to improve your writing?
Very little, to be honest, because the data we get, particularly on Medium, is not very insightful. What I did is I had a lot of conversations with my readers. I replied to every single comment for years, and that's how I learned who my reader is. And the funny thing is, I knew very little about their hard facts. I didn't know their demographics, rarely, unless it was very obvious on their profiles. What I paid attention to is what are they saying? Why do they say they like this article? Why do they say they don't like the article? Why do they disagree with what I have written? I learned a lot about my audience that way. And then in the next step, what we did pretty soon together with Philip is we started to build communities. One of the first communities we launched was a Facebook group, and we had hundreds, thousands of people joining these Facebook groups. And I was answering every single question that writers had in these groups. I was doing live streams and I was just paying attention to everything happening there and all the conversations people were having. That's how I learned more about my target audience and my existing audience at that time.
I think that's really a great lesson where, as a creator, it's not a one-way street. It's not you just creating content and that's it. It's a conversation, right? So learning more about who your audience actually is. What are they struggling with? What do they want to read? What makes them respond? Like, that's so important because otherwise you can do the exact same thing you said, just be super consistent, but consistently maybe the wrong thing or not the most optimal thing. So really getting to know who you're speaking to, who you're creating content for, I think that is a key lesson. So let's shift the conversation from Medium to Substack, because that is a move you've made about a year ago while you were a top writer on Medium and you've built most of your audience on Medium. What made you decide to actually move to Substack?
To be honest, I never considered it a big move or a change of platforms. In my head, it is an addition, and I look at platforms as tools or as an opportunity to reach your goal. The platform is never the end goal. And Substack was just the next strategic move in order for us as a team to be able to collaborate and reach a wider audience. On Medium, you don't have many opportunities to collaborate. On Medium, you and I wouldn't have the opportunity to team up and build a bigger audience or do things that one of us couldn't do on their own. On Substack, that was clear from the beginning. Like, there was a lot of collaboration opportunities, and it was just the next logical step, especially given that I and we were able to repurpose our content and to just take what we have done over the last couple of years and leverage it in a new place. And I think the biggest lesson for me there is the platform is a tool. You use those tools to achieve your goals. Don't get too attached to the platform itself, because what matters the most is your skills, your brand, your reputation, and the audience you're building along the way.
Now, one of the things you say quite a lot is that you only start from zero once. And I really like that way of thinking. And I think that's what you showed with let's call it the move from Medium to Substack, or even as an addition, is you're not starting from scratch on that platform. So can you talk a little bit more about what it means that you're only starting from zero once?
Yeah, I always tell our readers and our clients the first days, weeks, months are the hardest because you are writing and nobody is seeing it. And how would they? Nobody knows you. You have to build the audience. You have to get in front of people one by one. And people often forget that this hard stage will be over, and then everything you do next will just build up on what you've done before. What you said about Substack, when I published my first Substack note, it instantly got a couple hundred likes. Not because it was a great note, but because there were a lot of people on the platform knowing me and wanting to support me. And there were a lot of writers that I have collaborated with before who just supported me by liking, by resharing, and by saying, welcome to the platform. And that is an advantage that you gain over time. And of course, it's unfair if you are a new writer and you look at these big creators and they jump on every new platform and they seem to instantly do well. But it's always the building block of what they have done over the last couple of years. In our case, it's almost a decade of being in this industry, trying to learn, trying to collaborate, trying to become better. And it's the same with this podcast, right? Yes, we're launching it from scratch when we release the first episodes, but it's not as if you're launching a podcast from the get-go with zero audience, because you're able to promote it to your existing audience. And that's why I think it's so important to be laser focused in the beginning when you're building your audience on the first platform, because you want to get in front of as many people as possible, as effectively and efficiently as possible. It doesn't make sense to repurpose your content and be on 5 different places from the start. Nail one platform, get really confident about it, and then start to spread your wings and take that advantage to all the other places you want to be present on.
I think the one thing that ties all of this together as well is building your email list, right? Because if you're never building your email list, then you might actually have to start over in terms of bringing your audience from one platform to another. But I think if we look at our Substack, the move to Substack was easier because you've been building an email list since 2018. I've been building an email list since 2018. And that is an audience you actually own. And a social media following is an audience you rent. It's still that platforms. And I think that is so important no matter what type of content you're creating. If it is on Medium, if it is on LinkedIn or on YouTube or a podcast, you want to drive people to an email list because that's when you can make these moves to different platforms more easily without having to have this feeling of starting all over again. That's why I love Substack, because you're building your email list at the same time. It's all designed that way. But in general, that's just an important thing to do, right? Really build this list of your email list so you have an audience you can always move along with you and you can always directly communicate with them.
Yeah, without an email list, you have a following, and the following is worthless because your followers can be gone in an instant, your profiles can be banned. With an email list, you have a business, you have an opportunity to monetize, you are interesting to collaboration partners, and you just have so much more power and control over anything you do.
Absolutely, yeah. So do you think for creators that it is a smart move for them to jump to platforms if they see better opportunities there?
Not necessarily. I think a lot of people lose way more time chasing shiny objects than what they actually gain from hopping on a trend very early on. And personally, my philosophy is I don't want to be on a platform early on. I want to join a platform when I know it is well established and I'm not taking a big risk. And if you are a new creator, you will always feel like, oh, I'm too late. I'm too late to LinkedIn. I'm too late to Substack. I'm too late to Medium, too late to YouTube. But you are on the safer side investing into one of those platforms that have been around for 10 plus years, where lots of people have experience and they can actually teach you how to do well on either of these platforms rather than chasing the next big thing. There will always be the next platform and you can always bet on it if you have some extra time. but I wouldn't bet on it first. And personally, I don't take that move simply because I don't want to take that kind of risk. And I'm all about how can I use my time in the most efficient way possible and work less to create the same outcome. And that's just not the case when you are on a brand new platform that isn't well established yet.
I think that's the key, right? Because new platforms, they come and go. But if they're not yet proven to work, I think it is a bit of a shiny object, a bit of a distraction to try and look for success there. Ultimately, what happens for most creators is they keep bouncing between platforms and never really growing anywhere while they're very busy and spending a lot of time on those platforms. So I agree with you there. It's important to choose a platform that suits your type of content creation and then go all in on it and really like focus on one platform. That's how you can learn how it works. You learn the nuances of how it works, the culture on that platform, and you can really use that to build an audience. Take that audience to an email list, and then you never have to start from zero again.
Now, before we continue with this week's episode, we've got a quick announcement for you. This Thursday, October 2nd, we are hosting a live Substack Growth Masterclass. And this masterclass is completely free to attend, and it's for you if you're looking to grow your audience and your income on Substack. Now, if you want to attend this masterclass, make sure to click the link in the description below, the description of this episode. Again, it's completely free to sign up. And even if you cannot attend the masterclass live, still sign up for it so you get the replay sent directly to your email inbox. So, having said that, let's continue with this week's episode.
So, Sinem, let's talk about monetization, because you were writing the early days on Medium, you were growing your audience, but how was it for you to monetize your writing? How did you experience any challenges with that? Was it easy for you? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, maybe let's zoom out for a second and talk about Medium as a monetization channel, because I think that's important to understand my background. So on Medium, you essentially get paid to write. You publish articles. If people read those articles, you get paid. That worked pretty well for me for a long time, and I was just getting paid through my readers. That is the most comfortable way to get paid as a writer. The problem is you are not building a business that way. You are just a content creator, essentially, that has to create more and more in order to get paid every single month. It's comfortable as long as it works, but it's not sustainable. And that's the same for any other platform where a similar monetization method is in place. When I switched to thinking about how else to monetize, I felt super uncomfortable because I realized suddenly I have to actually sell to a person. And you don't think about that when you're getting paid through a platform because you don't have that kind of connection to the money. But when you're building a creator business where you are the educator and you're helping individuals, and doesn't matter if you're selling a book, you're selling a low-priced digital file or a template, you're selling a course or a high-ticket coaching offer. You're always getting paid by individuals, which means you have to prove that your work is valuable to them or can be valuable to them. And that was very hard for me in the beginning for very obvious mindset struggles because I didn't know if my work was worth paying for. I didn't know how to charge, what to charge. I didn't want to charge too much because that felt greedy and it didn't feel very aligned. And it took me, I would say, probably 2+ years to get really comfortable with selling and with the fact that I actually want to make money with my work because I deserve to get paid for what I'm doing. And it was a lot of ups and downs. It was a lot of just working on the skills itself, but it was a big mental game to get there.
Did that shift just happen, or did you get there in a certain way? Because this is a big issue, I think, or a big struggle for a lot of creators and writers, maybe specifically, on getting paid for your work and maybe selling something and feeling that you deserve that what you share can be monetized and you should be paid for it. So you said you realized I deserve to get paid for what I do. Was that just a realization, or did you work towards that realization?
It was a realization, but I believe a lot of different things that happened before build up towards that one moment. Because when you are creating, you're building, you're publishing, you're making an effort, and you're not really seeing the rewards financially, it's building small frustrations day by day. And then maybe you are getting paid, but you're just selling a $27 product, and you realize that even if you sell 20 of those, 50 of those, you don't really make a lot of money, right? And it was a lot of those small moments which eventually made me realize I don't want to be glued to my desk. I don't want to be glued to my computer. I like what I do, but there are a lot of other things that I like more than working. And if I want to have time for those things and for my favorite people, for my family, for my friends, I have to be very clear about how I want to monetize, and I need to feel confident and good about it. I need to find ways that feel aligned with who I am and what I want to do so that I can get my work done, get paid well, and live well, because I started my business in order to build freedom. And if you cannot monetize strategically and confidently, you're never going to achieve freedom, because not knowing how you make money or not getting paid what you think you deserve is always going to hold you back to a certain degree, even if it's just mentally. Even if you make a lot of money, but you know that you could make more money, it's going to hold you back, because you'll know that you're not playing to your highest potential. And that's something you want to do, especially if you start your business from a perspective of, I want to grow. I want to see what I can achieve as a person. I want to stretch myself, and I want to be able to build something that I'm genuinely proud of. And that was the case for myself. I was pretty young when I started my business. I did want to build something that I'm excited about and that I'm proud of. And even now, recording this session, many years into my journey, I don't feel like I'm even close to having explored my full potential as a creator, as an entrepreneur. But I'm excited about the journey, and I think that's what counts. Like, always wanting to stretch yourself and being open to new opportunities and the next step.
So you had this realization, I deserve to get paid for my work, and I want freedom. I want a life of freedom. So I need to make something happen that will actually allow me to live this life of freedom. What did you do business-wise? What was one of the first offers you set up out to monetize outside of directly getting paid through Medium?
We started building courses and coaching offers. But honestly, I feel like the biggest shift was less about the actual products and offers and more an internal one, where you suddenly don't feel bad about charging for whatever you offer, because you know what it can do for the buyer. That was a big switch for me, realizing that what I'm doing is a service, and they're not just paying me out of thin air. They want something that I have, or that I can provide, or that I can create. And that is actually valuable to them. And knowing that I could charge a lot more for a different audience or for a different type of client.
So you built the first courses. You realized I can create something that other people want and other people would pay me for.
Mm-hmm.
You're basically making a shift, because you're making a shift from just writing on Medium and publishing over and over again to really building a business. What was that shift from writer to builder for you, and how is that now?
The biggest shift is that you have to invest into a lot more skills, because as a writer, you are often putting yourself into some sort of silo, and you just have to write, right? You don't have to build other skills. You don't have to be great at marketing and sales and the business building side of things. And I had written hundreds of articles at that time when I decided, okay, I can take the next step. I want to invest into becoming a better entrepreneur, a more skilled marketer, and I want to be able to make more money as a result.
If someone right now is in that content creation phase and they're getting a little bit of traction, they're building their audience a little bit, what's one piece of advice you would give them to make this shift actually from creator to builder, from writer to builder? What specific skills would you advise?
I guess the most valuable thing you can invest in is understanding buyer psychology, trying to understand your audience and why they would be willing to actually pay or pay more to get access to whatever it is that you are providing or that you could potentially build. And understanding why people make buying decisions and what goes into a buying decision emotionally and logically.
You always say that the money has to come from somewhere. That's one of the quotes I love that you say that quite a lot to our clients. The money has to come from somewhere. And I think that way of thinking, that's a mindset shift where it's no longer, I'm just going to build stuff and I see what happens. You're thinking from a customer perspective, that exact buyer psychology. What would make someone interested? What problems do they have? What goals do they have that they're currently not achieving? And how can I help them? Right. So really thinking in a way of, how could people pay me? And I know it sounds like a basic question almost, but if you really think about it, that is the essence of running a business, right? What can I offer? What's the buyer psychology? That's how you can build offers that really sell. Do you find that when you made that shift to becoming a builder, was that something that came natural to you, or did you actually invest in books? Did you follow courses to really learn about this buyer psychology?
I had to stretch myself. And I think that's also tied to the fact that naturally, my personality, I don't feel like I've been born as an entrepreneur. I'm not the biggest risk taker. I love structure. I love knowing what comes next, knowing what to do and when to do it. And as an entrepreneur, especially in the content space, you don't have any of those rules and you don't have any structure. There's so much you can do. There are so many mistakes you can make. And I felt very overwhelmed by all of that in the beginning, especially because Medium as a platform was such a very clear and obvious space to navigate. There was not much that I could do wrong. I knew my stuff. I was really good at it, and I could just do it over and over again. And suddenly I was in this online marketing space or online business space where you can learn a million different things, make lots of mistakes, waste a lot of money, time, and energy. And I had to be very careful about picking what are the skills I want to invest in, what aligns with me as a person, what aligns with my existing skills, and what does not sound good to me at all, even though it might be a valuable skill.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really also a difference between a platform like Medium and Substack, for example, where Medium back in the day, you could really just write and get monetized that way. And it's nowadays, unfortunately, more difficult on Medium. But on Substack, you have to think like a builder already. You have to think like an entrepreneur more, because the way to get paid is through paid newsletters, right? Paid subscriptions. And that already requires someone to decide, I want to read your work and I want to pay for it. And it also already primes you and trains you in a way to think more like a builder and like an entrepreneur, which is personally why I do really love Substack, because I always said like I'm an entrepreneur first and a writer second. But it requires a shift in thinking there.
Yeah.
And for us both having started on Medium, you could just get paid directly from your writing. But if you really want to scale and if you want to build an asset like a digital business, you will have to make that shift from creator to builder, from writer to builder, and learn all these skills that are part of that.
And I think the most exciting part about all of that is that you gain control. The more skills you have, the better you understand the landscape, the better you understand what your strengths and weaknesses are, the more control you have, the more you can invest in building a business that feels true to you, that pays you well, and that allows you to live the life you desire or the lifestyle that you admired in the first place. The less flexibility you have, the more you are tied to existing structures, the less opportunities you have.
Mm-hmm.
And getting also like breaking free from platforms and thinking about, okay, what am I building? What is my business? What does my audience look like? Even if all these platforms disappear, that just gives you so much more freedom and flexibility. And it allows you to think very differently rather than saying, okay, what's the best way to do well on one specific platform? Because that will always leave you attached to the platform.
And that's the difference between building an audience and building a business. Well, Sinem, thank you so much for sharing your lessons with us. And thank you all for tuning into the Right Build Skill podcast. It would really help us out if you would share this podcast episode with one other person you think could benefit from it. And with that being said, we'll see you on the next episode.